2, 1. Right, we are now live. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are, and welcome to Chattering with Nicholas Vince, and I'm going to be chattering with Bryan Moore. Good evening, Bryan.
How are you, Mr. Vince? Mr. Berman Vince.
I'm very Berman Vince. Yeah, no, depending if we're thinking professional, legal. Yeah. It confuses.
Old Nick, right?
Yeah, old Nick. Yeah, no, old Nick. Yeah, no, I've been called that a few times.
Why do I just believe that?
Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I'm going to, just before we start chattering away live, I just wanted to share with folks, for those of you who don't know, came over about 4 or 5 hours ago, that Angus Scrim has passed away at the age of 89, which I know many people are going to be touched. And just wanted to say, met him once, such a delightful gentleman, and also treated fans with so much respect, really went the extra mile. I was at a convention with him last year, and he was 88 years old. He insisted on coming to the VIP party at 8 o'clock on the Saturday night after he'd been at his table all day, and stayed through till around about 10:30, just talking to people. And the convention organizer was saying, Angus, you don't have to do this. You don't feel you have to if you're feeling tired. No, he just wanted to chat to people. So very sad to hear that today. And you said you met him, Bryan?
Very briefly at a Fangoria convention in Los Angeles. It was, I think, Tony Timpone, the editor emeritus, who's another great guy. Tony just, it was a hi-bye, shaking hands thing, but, you couldn't meet him and not think, boy, and, all his great iconic things from Phantasm. He didn't really look like that in person because he had that longer sort of hair. And again, like you said, he was just the nicest guy, the polar opposite of the tall man. But he was absolutely like you. He was a horror icon, and a part of horror history. It is sad, but you mentioned he was 89.
89 years old is a very good age.
It's a good long run too. I mean, we should all make it that long in one piece, right? But yeah, it's sad when anyone goes. I mean, like last week was a dark week. It was Lemmy from Motorhead, and who was it? I think Wes Craven not long before that. So it's kind of been
2015 was, but 2015 was tough. 2015 was definitely tough, and losing an awful lot of people, including somebody we'll kind of refer to later on, Christopher Lee. But before we get started on that, I just wanted to share a couple of things. Just remind people that next week's show, I'm going to have Ryan Andrews, who's the writer and director of Save Yourself, starring Jessica Cameron and Tristan Risk. Ryan's going to be joining me. I'm also delighted to announce that Gigi Sol Guerrero, Lisa Ovi, and got it confirmed today, a young lady named Katie Bonham, are going to be joining me in February for Women in Horror Month. Over three of the shows in February. And I've also got the guys from the Fright Night documentary, You're So Cool, Brewster. They'll be with me in a couple of weeks' time, and a couple of guys behind a film, which is basically made for a feature film made for £150. It's a really interesting film, and I think they're going to have a lot to talk about that. So they're going to be joining me later in the month as well. So keep an eye out for those. And just a reminder, as far as my film is concerned, The Night Whispered, the first blog post will be going up tomorrow. So I had hoped to have it this last week, but leaking roofs, friend turning up from Paris, all sorts of things going on. But that will be going up, and you'll find a link to that on the show after the tomorrow, along with some other stuff. But yeah, so enough about me and the show. So Bryan, the reason I asked you on the show is because you're just, and when I say just about to, tomorrow, is that right? The Kickstarter kicks off?
It is, and I'll apologize now. I'm not used to the Google Hangout Skype because I want to look at you, that handsome face across the front. But I know you said no. Look up at the camera. So if I do that, we'll get rid of these over 50 moments, hide the double chin, all that. So I'll apologize if I keep going like that. That's it.
People are used to that. I really wouldn't worry about that too much at all.
Thank you to everyone watching to forgive me everything. tomorrow is the day we launched the Kickstarter for the third author bust project, the Bram Stoker Bust Project, and it's exciting. And again, thank you for having me to let me just sort of jabber on and on about it. You know, it's what a treat and a privilege to be part of the chattering family with Gigi and the Saskas and Chris Alexander and all these great folks.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you very much indeed for coming on. And you just mentioned the Saskas, and I know they've supported the previous projects. Is that right?
Yeah, they're such angels. I've never met Jen and Sylvia in person, but they've got to be the finest example of how to just do it right. You know, they started from nothing, just really cut their teeth on making films and became very popular. Number one, they do great work. Number two, they seem like, you just spoke about Mr. Scrim. They're just genuinely nice people who know how to treat the people who appreciate their work well. And what I met them, or online, just became Facebook friends, around about the time I did the HP Lovecraft Bronze Bust Project with Jovanka Vukovic. She was the guiding force, so I learned all about running a Kickstarter campaign. Jovanka knew Jen and Sylvia, and we just sort of, crossed paths that way. But they were so sweet and always just sort of posting about it. And, on Facebook, social media is everything, how you get the word out about your work. And that's what they did. They were just really nice about always making a post here and there. And, I've tried to do the same. Again, not because they're nice gals or they're both cute as buttons, but I genuinely dig their work. And I think they did their first Kickstarter for a graphic novel. I hope I can remember the title. It's Kill Crazy Nymphos Attack.
Kill Crazy Nymphos Attack. They actually came on the show and discussed this with Daniel Way, who's obviously the author, wrote dozens and dozens of Deadpool comments as well. Daniel's it's one of the funniest Kickstarter videos I think I've ever seen.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
That's like what it's just all the stuff happening behind the girls when they're doing it's like, yeah.
And that's the thing with Kickstarters. You can really go two different angles, because if, let's say, you're just some kid out there, some 18-year-old kid, and you've got an idea to do a creative project, but you don't have famous friends who can lend their name to it, for being nice people, or let's say you don't have a lot of experience. I think you can make up a lot, what you lack in just simple personality, like making a fun video, or maybe you make a really slick video professionally. I was lucky when I mentioned meeting the Saskas via social media. Jovanka, obviously, when she was editor of Rue Morgue forever, was very well connected, and I was too, but not as much as she was. Where she's a very good businesswoman. She just really taught me how to get over my fear of asking people I didn't know for stuff, favors, money, things to donate to the Kickstarter. It was a real eye-opener once I realized if you're committed to your goal, whatever it's going to be, most of the time people will rally around you to help. If you're doing something good, like making a film like you are, or the Saskas, had made films, but they were cutting their teeth on comic books. And me, I'm kind of, I'm sort of carving my niche, no pun intended, in making these horror author bust projects. So I kind of have a little bit of, this is the third time I've done it, so it's not, going out of the gate green and trying to do something I've never done before. So you create a name for yourself, and it all comes in time. But I got off on a tangent. You asked me about something, and I can't remember.
Yeah, I suspect the two of us will probably go off at tangents. I know the way my mind thinks. So, and I've got a list of things I want to cover. Actually, what I will do, because we're talking about the project, it goes live tomorrow. How long is it live for people to contribute to?
30 days. Most Kickstarters will go for 30 days, and we were actually ready to launch in December, but you know how it is in December. Everyone's either gone on holiday with their family or friends, and they're not spending money on Kickstarters. They're buying presents or, making sure their bills are paid during the lean holiday month. So we decided to launch it at the beginning of January, when everyone's sort of gotten the holidays and they're back home and they're back to work and looking for something fun. So timing is everything on these bus projects too, but it will run for 30 days. And I owe you a vote of thanks. I'd actually sent you the preview link yesterday, and you were kind enough to point out all my typos. Which I'm so glad you did.
Listen, I know there's an awful lot of text there. I have to say, folks, one of the things is, as I say, as Brian just said, he very kindly let me see a preview, and I was just sitting there drooling at some of the things like, but I want that. But oh no, I want that one as well. I have no money. No, but I want that one. Craig's not going to let me buy it, but I want that.
I should say it can be arranged for the chat. Never had anyone do that to you before, right?
No. But so for 30 days, so it will take people to the end of the month. So that for those of you who get paid at the end of January, then hold on, just mentally put some money aside for some of these gifts, because they really are some great. I mean, it's a worthy cause anyway, but they're all, most of the levels come with some sort of physical book or something else, or a poster or something else. They really are. But yeah, we were talking about proofreading. There's an awful lot of text there, so I'm hoping I've got most of them do have another read.
No, I'll go over it again, but I think you nailed the ones, where I think the worst one was I are to talk American gooder than most. I'm glad you caught that one, because that one just went right over my head. But actually, speaking of which, here's another thing too. When you do several Kickstarter campaigns, the rules have changed since I started the first one with Lovecraft and Poe. You can't, now they've changed it to where you can't use part of your funds that you raise for a donation. And what we did on Lovecraft and Poe was we took $1,000 out of each campaign and donated it to the children's literacy programs. For Lovecraft, since it took place in Rhode Island, we donated the bust went to a private library, the Providence Athenaeum, but the donation went to I think it's the Providence Public Library System. So it all went to the kids. I don't know if they bought computers with it or whatever they do with it. It did go there. In Boston, when the Edgar Allen Poe bust is finally unveiled again in its permanent place it's the Johnson Wing. It's being renovated, which will be the permanent placement. We'll be making the donation to Read Boston, which is also the children's literacy program. We weren't able to do that when we unveiled it initially in October of 2014, simply because the project wasn't through, but I'll be back there this summer when the Johnson Wing opens to do that. One thing I'm doing on the Stoker bust, and this is how Kickstarter changed the rules, I can't raise the funds to make any kind of donation to anything, so I'm taking $1,000 of my own money, and when we go to unveil the bust on World Dracula Day in Dublin, I'll be donating my funds, no Kickstarter, but my funds to Children's Books Ireland, which is their local literacy program. So it is for a good cause, even though per Kickstarter rules, it can't be part of the project, which is why it's not mentioned. I will be doing that because, it's tradition. When I remember growing up, my parents got divorced when I was about 12, so my sister and I would go to the library quite often. And this is in the dark days before computers, VCRs hadn't even been invented. We actually had to go to read, and it was very much a community-based thing. And part of finding solace there, with other children, is sometimes they'd have puppet shows or reading groups. The library's free. When people say an education costs money, sure it does, but the library's free. So I think the least I can do, whether it's personally or with the prior two bus projects, is you've got to give back. You have to give back something, and children are the next generation, because Nicholas, when you and I hit that over 50 mark, because we haven't hit it yet, but when we get older, who's going to be taking care of us? But people who are little kids now will be of working age, when we're older. So you try and do something that's going to build for generations of the future. Not to sound too lofty, but that is part of it, is just giving back to the kids when you can and where you can. So
I think, of course, it is going to change, isn't it? As you're saying, because so much stuff is done online now. We've got Kindles, we've got iPads, we read books and so on. You lose all that stuff. That's one of the things that the library near where I used to work has now become an arts center. So they are still doing it. It's a beautiful space, a beautiful little theater into it. It happens to have one of those big libraries with 2 floors and a big room. And you look at these big spaces and you think, it's such a shame if it doesn't becomes something else for the community. Because
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. You lose all the, the fact that children can go in and just the magic of learning and sitting, and people still struggle with reading and so on. So I think these literacy projects are so important, so massively important. Well, thank you very much indeed for pointing that out, because I was curious about that.
Yeah. I'll jump in. It's funny, when we made the donation in Rhode Island at the, I think it was the Rochambeau branch in Providence, the library was full of little kids because they had a children's wing. None of them were reading. They all had computers there. It seems like more people go to log online to a computer, which is good. Some people can't afford a computer at home if they find a job. You see a lot of adults doing that, which is fantastic. But most of the kids were online playing video games, and I thought, why are they playing video games in a library? But then I thought, wait a minute, they're in the library. They're not out there getting into trouble. This is a good thing. So, you hope that even though $1,000 is not a lot of money, I don't know what the exchange rate is to pounds, but it does do something, whether it's, whether it is, I know in Ireland, it will probably go to books. I think in Providence, Rhode Island, it likely went to some sort of computer something. They don't tell me where it goes. I sign the check and they say thank you, and that's kind of it. But you're right. And well, I've heard about that library with the second floor by where you are, but that's another story.
You promised not to tell.
I'm sorry.
Trying to bring this back on track again. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start. A lady called Liz very kindly posted a question before the show, and Liz's question was, how long does the process of creating each bust take for you from inception to completed project? So
sure, it's two-part. I'll talk about the sculpture part versus the length of the project. And thank you, Liz, for your question. The sculpture, I've been sculpting professionally for about 30 years. And 30 years ago, it took me a lot longer because I was learning, like we all are when we first learn our craft. Now I can usually knock out one of these busts in about 30 days. You find your groove, and you put so many miles in the clay over the years that it does become second nature. Things like, how deep to sculpt the eye socket in relation to the nasolabial fold, in relation to the corners of the mouth. You learn the mathematics of the head. The distance between two eyes is the width of one eye, things like that. If anyone's interested in just good basic mathematics of the head, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by John Buscema and Stan Lee is a staple. I know so many sculptors who do portraits of just male or female faces who they all have that book. So that's the book I still refer to constantly. So it's about a 30-day process to finish the sculpture. One thing I will show you, I brought it up from my workshop downstairs, is you can't do a good sculpture without reference. And I'll see if I can bring this here. I usually get large pieces of foam core with all the pictures that I could find of Bram Stoker. Close-ups of the head. Here's one of him on a ship. Here's one of the few profiles that I could find where he's in front of the Lyceum Theater with Sir Henry Irving, who he worked for 30 years. Most Stoker fans know that. Here's one when he's older. You kind of got to decipher, should I go for an older look or a younger look? And it doesn't stop there. This is actually, I use these foam core boards over and over again. Who's on the back? Oh, this is one of my boards for HP Lovecraft. So I reuse this stuff. I don't take them down, but yeah, this is in front of me when I'm sculpting. And we've got a second one. The office is a bit cramped. Who was on the back of this? Oh, this is the Edgar Allan Poe board. And the farther you go back in history, you really don't have as much photo reference.
Right,
obviously,
right.
Poe died in I should know this. Was it 1849? So photography really was in its infancy. There just, I think, are maybe less than half a dozen photos of him. With Stoker, here we are back again, where it's, he's much older there. He's sterner of face, Here he is a much younger guy with a fuller beard. This is the classic photo that's most widely known as Stoker. Our friend David J. Scull, has written The Monster Show, Hollywood Gothic. He's actually doing a biography about Stoker. He told me Bram Stoker wasn't well. This is right before he died, and which is very sad. I can't recall what he died from, but I do think it's the most, when people think of Stoker, they do think of this photo. It's fairly common. Here's Bram again with Henry Irving. There's Bram, one of the rare ones where he's actually smiling. And here he is, one of the younger photos at Trinity College when he was on the debate team. So there's all kinds of pictures. There's also, I should point out, this really nice guy who I've never met in person, and this is the great thing about the internet, named John Edgar Browning. He's written 2 books about vampires that he's donating to the Stoker Bust Project. Another Stoker scholar. John's actually given me half a dozen unpublished photographs that I've never seen. Pictures of Bram Stoker at funerals, pictures of a true profile, which again, it's really hard if you're trying to sculpt someone like Edgar Allan Poe, who you only see from the front. There's no profile that I could find. You're going a little on guesswork, so you just hope you're nailing something that looks right in people's mind's eye. So anyway, to answer Liz's question, it all starts with great reference. And fortunately with Bram Stoker, it's fairly plentiful. And we got a few of the profile. So as far as the entire process of coming up with the idea, assembling a project team, this started in November of 2014. I've been working on this for over a year. And the primary reason for that is before the Dublin Writers Museum graciously said, yes, we'll take the bust, I got turned down by 8 libraries in England, Ireland, and the United States. No one wanted it, which is what I found with Lovecraft. You're a stranger writing to a library saying, hey, can I give you this very expensive piece of art for free? And the usual responses are, who the hell are you? And why do you want to give this to us for free? And if they say no, the reason I've gotten the no most is, no, you're not dead. And I'm like, what does that mean? It means I'm still a working, living artist, and the work doesn't have provenance. I haven't been sculpting for 100 years. I've only been sculpting for 30. Sorry, I'll work on that whole dead thing. But anyway, this is how long it takes.
I mean, the thing is, of course, what suddenly struck me, of course, is, particularly in the UK, sadly, that so many of our libraries are closing down, not just because of the internet and the electronic devices, etc., but simply money. Wow. The extraordinary thing is, I don't know if have you ever heard of the Tate Gallery in London?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, well, see, the Tate Gallery, well, Mr. Tate was part of a company called Tate and Lyle, who really exploited sugar in this country. And you'll find all over London the Tate libraries. So a lot of libraries were donated to the community by a very rich man. And that's how we got libraries in the first places. Then, of course, they were handed over to the local councils. Now all the local council grants are being cut. So the libraries are just closing. So I'm just thinking, over time, you are going to find it harder and harder to find public spaces in which you can put these things.
Yeah, in fact, one of the libraries that turned us down was the British Library, which, it's in I never know whether to say Night of the Demon or Curse of the Demon, whichever was the first British production, but it's the one with that beautiful domed library where...
Well, that's where it used to be.
Oh.
That is now part of, well, that's where I remember it. That's when I used to do research for Clive Barker. I used to go into that beautiful round reading room that you're describing with the wooden. I remember that so vividly. It was such an amazing thing to do.
Beautiful.
But now the British Library is a huge modern building, which I went to a year or so ago because they had a Gothic exhibition on there.
Terror and Wonder exhibition.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I heard about it. Well, Graham Humphreys, our friend, told me about it, which is amazing. He gave me a book of the exhibit. It was incredible.
And I don't know if you spotted, but basically they had Bram Stoker's manuscript, handwritten manuscript for the play of Dracula.
Yep.
And what I loved most about it, because I just dramatized a couple of my short stories for the London Horror Festival at the time, is what Bram Stoker had done. He'd obviously got a copy of the novel of Dracula and got a pair of scissors and a pot of glue, and literally he'd written stage directions and written dialogue and so on, and he copied and pasted, physically copied and pasted the speeches.
Isn't it amazing? Instead of having to rewrite the whole thing.
I've written it once. Why on earth would I want to write it again? It's just like, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, that was a wonderful exhibition. It had some Clive stuff there. It was yeah. So yeah. Now I'm afraid the rotunda for the British Library is still there. It's an amazing exhibition space, and you can go in there, and they do hold wonderful exhibitions. But that is now part of the British. That is the British Museum. It was always inside the British Museum. The British Library was always inside.
I think from what Graham had told me, and I looked this up online, part of the rest of their original Stoker materials is, of course, the original play for the Dracula manuscript. But also, as the story goes, and they got the copy, he lost his library card and had to write a letter asking permission to get another one, and someone had to vouch for him. Like, it was a big deal back then to go in and use their books.
Oh God, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, for Clive to get me to go, Clive had to write a letter of reference for me to be allowed to get a British Library lending card.
Wow.
I remember I had my little photograph taken, and so on. And it was wonderful. It really
were like this. You both screwed up. Someone had to write you a letter. No, you didn't screw. Bram did. He lost his library card. But that's for real. You actually had to have a letter of reference.
And basically, because you had so many libraries. Because basically the British Library is the holding library for all published works in this country. Like in America, it's the Library of Congress.
Right.
So you have to submit a couple of copies. Oops, just remember, need to do that for one of my books. You are supposed to submit to particular libraries, and they do hold a copy of every book published in the country. Yeah, so they were basically, you had to prove that you'd researched and all the other available material that was in your local library or the county library or something like that before you got to go to the British Library. I think mostly the British Library were concerned about people going in and having a look at their collection of porn, because they got a wonderful collection of Victorian books.
The British have a collection of, you wouldn't think that.
Sorry, it's erotica. They call it erotica. They don't call it porn.
They'll be much more polite about their porn.
Yeah, absolutely. Victorian porn, basically. Erotica, that's one of the reasons. But yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so I have one question I want to say.
Sure.
Thinking of Bram Stoker.
No, wait, before, can you write me a letter of reference for this old book?
I'm nobody, trust me. I lost my reading card a long time ago.
Well, never hurts to ask. You don't ask.
I think we answered, or you answered Liz's question that, yeah, basically 30 days for the actual sculpting of the reference and so.
Yep.
Right. So when did you first read Dracula, the book Dracula by Bram Stoker? Can you remember?
I'm going to make an embarrassing confession. I'm still trying to get all the way through Dracula. I'm sorry, everybody. I know. I'm a whore. I just want to get the bus done. No, it's, I think I first picked it up when I was about 10. And when you're 10, good luck. It's like trying to read Poe or Lovecraft. For Lovecraft, you need a thesaurus. For Poe, you need a dictionary. It's so archaic. Stoker is kind of along the same lines, where, again, the first chapter, he's talking about this train ride and paprika chicken, and you get it, and I love the format, the letters. It's really clever.
Yeah.
But it's work. It's really work, and I'm embarrassed to say I'm still waiting.
I completely understand that. I mean, I read it probably when I was about 15, 16. Yeah. But of course, I'm English. And I'm used to, I will have read other, it certainly wasn't required reading. I remember I lost my copy and I had to go to the school office to see if I could get it back. And the school secretary handing it over, saying, "You're reading this?" I couldn't read this. So it's like, and of course it had, a scantily clad woman with somebody biting, a blood-lit rivulets down the neck and so on. And, it was slightly sensational because it was probably done. It was a paperback, and it was probably the paperback cover would have been done in the style of a Dennis Wheatley novel.
Oh, so that's the very pen and ink sort of.
Oh no, it's very much
the very lurid.
Yeah. It's going to be the photographic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Pulp Fiction basically type thing. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, no, I can completely. Hey, they've made enough movies. It's not like you don't know the story.
Yeah, but still, I'm sure that the scandal erupted from young Nicholas. The restrictions section. Shame on you.
Yeah, then I have to. So who is your favorite Dracula? Do you have an actor who's played Dracula, or a particular film or TV?
There's so many great ones, and obviously the first one that being raised in America that is Lugosi. But then you see what Christopher Lee, and you're like, ooh, it's almost apples and oranges because they both brought something so good to the role. Lugosi brought his, old world Hungarian charm. Christopher Lee, I think, brought a dignity that Lugosi had, but there was just something about Lee. Then you see what Gary Oldman did which was humanize the character. And then you look at people who should have never played Dracula. I might have pissed some people off, like Jack Palance, Louis Jourdan. They're good, but are they the screen Dracula? I mean, my vote is for Lugosi. How about you?
Sorry, my vote is for Louis Jourdan. Louis Jourdan is my favorite.
I gotta go. I gotta just gonna talk. Part comes. Sorry, show's over. Shakespeare.
I need the long flowing locks for Shakespeare. I've got the beard. You just need the long flowing locks. No, you see, because it's close to the novel, and again, and probably the reason I don't like Lee is because he hardly says a word. It's all to do with Van Helsing and so on. It's not the book. The Louis Jourdan, and I'm trying to remember who played. It was because it was made for TV.
Right. That was around the same time as the David McCallum True Story of Frankenstein.
Yes, yes, it was around about that time. Yeah, no, which is another fascinating, because that's a different take on it. But this was very much closer to the book, the Louis Jourdan version of it. And I just thought he looked tremendously Bat-like. He just had that. For me, he was far sexier than Christopher Lee.
Well, and that's the thing, Louis Jourdan, it's like comparing James Bond. When you talk about Roger Moore, who is a sexier James Bond, versus Sean Connery, who looks like he can hold his own, which makes more sense. That's how Louis Jourdan struck me. He is good looking. He is sexy. Is he the centuries-old undead count who's going to cross oceans of time? Well, he looks like it, but Lee looks like he could fight off Van Helsing, Quincy Stewart. Lugosi can smack a mirror out of Van Helsing's hand, and he's just got that hawk-like stare. Louis Jourdan, he'll talk his way out of it. Or he'll just give you the sexy arched eyebrow, the steepled fingers, the flare. You know what I mean? It's like different takes. It's
it's interesting. I mean, of course. To be honest, I will have watched it once on TV because, I mean, it was way before, when it came out, it was way before the days of video recorders.
Oh, yeah.
So I probably just remember, watched it once on TV when it came out. I can just remember sections of it so well. But I'm just very interested, very, very interesting.
You know what they never did? Wouldn't it be great if Monty Python had done a version of Dracula? If the Pythons did Dracula, who would be? I mean, John Cleese comes to mind immediately.
Immediately thinking of John Cleese. Yeah.
They call me Dracula. Call me Tim, but I'm getting off topic and stuff. But I do think Monty
I like
Python.
the idea of a Monty Python Dracula, actually. Yeah, it has to be better than Dead and Loving It, and yeah, all those spoof ones and so. Okay.
Right.
We'll move on. Yeah, deadly. Yeah, we'll just move. Or Blackula. Definitely better than Blackula.
I gotta stick up for Blackula in a way that's
really?
definitely a product of its time. That's William Johnson.
I think so. Yeah.
I hope I'm getting his name right. I mean, it's like you watch Blackula, then you watch him as, on Pee-wee's Playhouse as the king of cartoons. It's like, he was cool, you know, but again, it was that was done as a response to Young Frankenstein. Again, there's always this parallel between
Of course.
No, but, you know, for what it was, I think it was tongue-in-cheek and fun, but yeah, is William Johnson up there with Lee or Lugosi or Jordan? Who's to say?
Yeah.
What the hell do I know?
Yeah. Okay, well, now you mentioned David Scarl.
Yeah.
Earlier on. Now, did you meet him through the film Gods and Monsters? Have I got this right?
I sure did. I'll give you the skinny. I met David Scarl through Sir Ian McKellen. Years and years ago, I did makeup effects for films until I had 2 kids, and I couldn't afford to raise a family on that salary. So that's when I started shifting into toys. One of the last films that I worked on was Bryan Singer's Apt Pupil, which was a thrill. I love the Stephen King story, and Ian McKellen was there. I think they hired me to make some fake hands. At one point, he's shoving a cat in an oven. He plays this old Nazi character. I made him, and then at the last minute, Bryan Singer decided not to show it. So they didn't even get used. The hands were fine, but I went up to McKellen's house in the Hollywood Hills, nicest guy in the world, made coffee, he was so down to earth and just so cool. At that point, I didn't know his stage work. I only knew him from the Richard III film. And about a month after we wrapped on Apt Pupil, someone told me, guess who's playing James Whale in Gods and Monsters? And at that point, I knew the Christopher Brown book, Father Frankenstein. I went, who? And he went, Ian McKellen. I'm like, you're kidding. I thought, you know what? I've still got his number. He gave me his number at the house. I thought I should take him up with me. I was visiting David Manners, who was by then in his late 90s, and he played Jonathan Harker in Lugosi Dracula. He was in The Mummy, The Black Cat, this holdover from the Universal days. So I wrote David and I said, do you mind if I bring this English actor? I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is Ian McKellen. And Manners wrote back and said, sure, come on, that's fine. So I had a road trip with Ian McKellen. We drove from Los Angeles up to Santa Barbara, which is going up to Northern California. Just talked about everything, just the film business, cars, life, acting, writing, just the coolest guy in the world. We went up there, introduced him. He asked David Manners about James Whale, which is another story in itself. And he said, hey, why don't you come down and hang out on set? We're recreating The Bride of Frankenstein. I'm like, oh, boy, you bet I'd like to. So I go down there, and Dave Scarl was there. And Ian introduced us, and I knew who David was. I had Hollywood Gothic, and I think he had written The Monster Show by then, too. And immediately David, who's pretty reserved sort of guy, really nice guy, real sweetheart, but very reserved, started going into the best Dr. Pretorius impression. Because we were on The Bride of Frankenstein set, and we started doing Colin Clive and Ernest Thesiger back and forth. Just became fast friends and didn't keep in touch a lot over the years. It was always our paths kept crossing. When I got the idea to do this, I thought I should ask Dave if he wouldn't mind contributing some signed copies of Hollywood Gothic. Got in touch with him, and he said, well, you know, I'm about to release this biography on Bram Stoker. And I went, no, I didn't know that. He said, why don't I help you? Come speak at your event. I'll donate the copies. And that's how I met Dave. Again, nicest guy ever. Put me in touch with so many different people. Dave and a very nice lady named Lisa Morton, who's president of the Horror Writers Association, put me in touch with Dacre Stoker, which is how we got the blessing of the Bram Stoker estate. But anyway, that's how I met Dave, through Ian McKellen. And yeah, small world, man. You know, you live in Los Angeles, you're going to meet everybody.
Yeah.
So many people say, how do you know all these people? I'm like, 2 reasons. Number one, I've been around a while. Number two, you live in LA, you're going to meet them. Friends of friends, you walk into a McDonald's and, you know, there's Clint Eastwood ordering a burger. You know?
It's interesting. Did you meet Clive on Gods and Monsters? Because Clive was Clive Barker I'm talking about.
No, of course. No, but I did meet Clive years later when I worked for a Halloween company called Disguise Inc. In 2009, Clive lent his name and he did this line of Halloween masks and costumes. I think it was called Clive Barker's Dark Bazaar. And they let me sculpt this ritual dagger. And Clive came down one day, and he was so cool. I had red shorts, a red T-shirt, and red contact lenses, and just, I've never seen anyone walk in and just own the room. Charmed everyone. And I didn't even get to shake his hand. He just went, you know, I'll do a terrible Clive Barker impression, so I won't even bother. But he said, "Oh, you're doing the ritual dagger with the 666." I said, "Yeah." Does it look all right? He goes, "Looks like my painting." And he walked away and just sort of approved all the sculptures. That's the only time I've ever met Clive. But I was told he did go to the set of Gods and Monsters. Christopher Brown was there, who was a thrill to meet. And Paul, I'm drawing a blank. One of the producers, drawing a blank on Paul's last name, but that's the only time I've ever crossed paths with your dear friend Clive Barker, which one day it would be nice to sculpt a Clive Barker bust. So if you whisper in his ear, you know, maybe
I know people who can whisper in Clive's ear. That's absolutely fine. We can make
that goes to the next question. Have you whispered in Clive's ear?
Well, not yes. I'm moving on.
Had to take it there, man.
I'll very quickly share a comment that's just come in from one of my favorite ladies who watches this show, a lady called Kelly Rawn. Hi, Kelly.
Oh. Hi, Kelly. I know her name. I've seen her on Facebook, but we've never met.
Yeah, great supporter, Kelly. So Christopher Lee would definitely be my choice for favorite for Dracula. Second would be Gary Oldman, and yes, completely to Monty Python doing.
Ask Kelly, who would she cast as Dracula? Would she go for John Cleese? Graham Shep?
Yeah. So Kelly, if you're still there, then please just put a comment and Craig will pass it on.
Yeah, Nicholas and I need to know, Kelly. We're counting on you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We want to know which of the Monty Python team would you cast as Dracula.
Terry Jones would be a great Renfield, but Eric Idle would be a funnier one.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I've just had another question come in from my friend Eric Gross. Brian, who was the first celebrity bust that you created or were commissioned to do? Celebrity bust.
Celebrity bust. Well, it was for a toy. I have it. Let's see. Edit. I don't. There's so many toys. I think it's in a box. I'll answer your question right now. Right? It would be. All right. Way back in the Mattel days, it's an action figure of Ben Affleck for Armageddon. And I don't have one out of the box, but I've got one in the box where I think he had just done Chasing Amy. And Mattel got the license to do the action figures. And I went up to, I think it was still MGM. I think Sony had just bought him out. And went to meet some new guy named Ben Affleck where we couldn't, it was kind of, the internet was just coming in. I couldn't Google him. There were no images of him. No one had heard of the guy. So I went down to the set of Armageddon, and I'm tall. I'm about 6'3". Affleck had a couple inches on me. So, you know, I meet this kid who, again, sweetest kid you'd ever want to meet. He's like, "Oh, you're that guy from Mattel. You're gonna sculpt my action figure?" I said, "Yeah. Can I get some mug shots? You know, front view, side view?" And he goes, "Sure." So I put him up against the wall of the soundstage, got a half a dozen shots, got what I needed, and he grabbed my shoulders and he said, "Do a good job." I said, "I will, man." And I think they gave me a couple weeks to sculpt it, and that was the first celebrity I ever, you know, was commissioned, even though I was working for Mattel Toys. I've been commissioned to do a few of them. There's another one here. I'll pull this one. This is actually Kevin Garnett. If you're a sports fan, this was done for the Upper Deck Company, and I did a lot of sports collectible figures. There was this line called All-Star Vinyl, and a lot of different sculptors did them, but this is one I got to do of Kevin Garnett. I'm not a sports fan, but everyone said, "Oh, you're gonna make him do his hoof 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 thing," and I'm like, "What does he do?" And they say he's always doing this fist pump. So that's how I sculpted him. Kevin Garnett. And then, you know, sometimes he and Ben Affleck say, hey, how's it going? I don't do it really. Yeah.
I know, when you're really bored late at night, you just play with all your little toys. Yeah.
What makes you think I haven't done it already? Yeah, you know, it's fun. I mean, I'm so lucky. Again, when I started doing this, I didn't really have any teachers who would show me how to do it. So I just back when I was 20 years old, which is before electricity, you had to go to the library and get books on how to do it. Now you can find courses online, which is great. It's people are able to do so much more and so much faster these days. But yeah, those would be the only other celebrities. Trying to think if there's another celebrity. I will say, I guess I can say this. My hope is that Anne Rice, legendary author, will somehow be a part of this Bram Stoker bust. I've spoken with her assistant Beckett, who's a very, very nice guy, and she's busy. So obviously when you ask people, you know, if they can do it, if it's in their schedule, if someone vouches for you and writes you a letter to get you into the library, that's what will happen. But she did write back through Beckett and said, yes, you can sculpt a bust of me. It would be nice to do a bronze bust of her as one of these bust projects. Will that happen? I hope so, if I have time to do it, which would, everything I've ever read about her, she seems like a very cool lady, into a lot of different stuff, has definitely had a path in life from what I've read that's taken her so many different directions. But I think she would be a fascinating subject for a bust. And women are harder. It's very easy, easier to sculpt a manly countenance. Women, you've really got to rein it back because it's all about subtlety. The structure is different. The sizing is different. The math of the head is different. So it's a challenge. You know, some fellows I know, and I'll go off with one more thought on the bust project here. My friend Tony Cipriano, one of my sculpting mentors, as I mentioned, donated this bust of Vlad the Impaler, which is so wicked and so evil. Tony's so cool. Tony worked for Disney, and he's one of these sculptors who can just do it all. He can do Japanese anime women, which again are an exercise in subtlety. He can do cartoon characters. He can do these badass Frank Frazetta warriors, or he can do portrait sculptures. Every time I see Tony's work, I look at it and I'm like, why do I bother? I mean, there are so many people out there so much better than I, but what you do is you take the good with it and you learn how they solve problems. Like, oh, that's how Tony gets that curl of the mouth, or oh, that's how he does that. So it's yeah, it's neat to keep learning from other people who are better than you, because that makes you raise the bar for yourself.
Very, very interesting. That thing, as a writer, you have to read. As a filmmaker, you have to watch movies, and you just never stop, you know, because there's going to be new techniques and there's new materials and there's new ways of, you know, of doing things. We have got some responses. John Cleese as Count Dracula.
This is from Kelly Ron?
Yeah, and Eric Idle as Lucy.
Funny, of course I do.
Yeah, of course. Funnily enough, Steve Zarebski would cast Eric Idle as Dracula.
Is Steve online with us?
Yeah, I believe Steve is still online. Yeah, he's online with us. I can't actually see.
Tell him congratulations for his 5-year anniversary at work. I saw it on.
I missed that. Oh yes, Steve, congratulations. That's brilliant. That's really, really well done.
Well, it is well done, especially these days, to stay at any job 5 years. Yeah. That's off to you, buddy. Congrats.
Congratulations, Steve. That's brilliant. Absolutely. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned very briefly, Graham Humphreys. And in fact, Graham mentioned this project when I was chatting to him just before Christmas, when we were going through some of his work. He's like, oh yeah, no, we've got to have that in. How did Graham get involved in the HP Lovecraft project to begin with?
Sure, he was a friend of Jovanka Vukovic's. I think he had done, I don't know if he did covers for Rue Morgue, but she knew him. And I didn't. And she says, oh, he's going to do a mock-up of the poster. And he did, and my jaw dropped. I'm like, oh my God, this guy he's so good. And Graham and I didn't meet. He did the Lovecraft Bust Project poster and the Edgar Allan Poe Bust Project poster. Of course, he's done Bram Stoker as well. Graham and I met at the Poe Bust unveiling. He is so nice. He actually came over all the way from England to Boston, and we picked him up at the airport. And it's so funny because, like I mentioned, I'm pretty tall. I'm 6'3". I don't know how tall Graham is, but he's a little fella. I love Graham.
Up to about there. He's up to about there on me. Yeah.
But again, like how Clive Barker walked in and on the room, that Graham Humphreys is one of the most magical people I've ever seen, where again, he works the English accent, the bastard. You, Graham, I've never seen anyone charm more people by walking into a room. And my daughter, Chloe, who's 24, I mentioned her, she was there. And she goes, "Oh my God, Doc, I love Graham. Is he coming to Ireland for Stoker? I love him so much. I just want to pick him up and go squee." I'll tell him you said squee. But there's something about Graham that does make you want to pick the guy up and just go, he's just so fucking huggable. I love Graham Humphreys. Everyone loves Graham Humphreys. Anyway, that's how we met. He's also, again, I will say, and I've said this to Graham, his artwork has become emblematic of these bust projects far more than my own sculptures, because that's what's selling them. One of the first things we have are his great, incredible posters to get the image out, and he's the one who brands these campaigns. And he knows it, and he's so humble about it. You know, again, you know, when people, you know, building a website for my own art, and of course, you know, all of a sudden I thought, this looks more like a website for Graham Humphreys than my own sculptures. But again, to me, it's a point of pride to be able to work with Graham, that his artwork is so good, it elevates the status of these bust projects. And for your the English DVDs, Graham's done posters and DVD covers from films that you'd never want your own mother to see, but all of a sudden they become very classy because they've got a Graham Humphreys illustration on it.
It is. I know when the. Incidentally, Steve just pointed out it's 8 years, not 5 years, his anniversary. So congratulations, Steve! 8-year anniversary.
Congratulations, Steve. Well
really well done, dude.
You got me. I've never had a job for 8 years. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You just to say about Graham and I've never met Steve, but I know who he is. He's, I think he's always posting on Jen and Sylvia Soska's page. It just seems like a really cool, supportive, nice guy. He's always, you know, cheerleading everyone. And that's what's nice on Facebook, when you see someone who's so positive, like Steve, just always, you know, building everyone up. You know, we see a lot of stuff we don't like there too, but someone like Steve is sort of like a ray of sunshine. I just close, you know, reject people and just close them. It's just going to be negative. Just, I have no time for you in my life.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's you know, just way too short as far as I'm concerned. I think the point you were making about Graham Humphreys is it's very, very true. I just think, as I say, we've got the guys coming on from the documentary for You're So Cool, Brewster. They did the Hellraiser documentary. I don't know if you've come across this big. I think originally it was about 60 hours. They got into 3 DVDs because they did Hellraiser and Hellbound, and they're doing Fright Night 1 and 2. And they've interviewed everybody, and they interviewed absolutely everybody on that. But exactly the same thing is they just wanted to get. I mean, it's a great product, but they were very anxious to be able to get Graham involved. And Graham's done a most beautiful poster for You're So Cool, Brewster. It's one of my favorite of his pictures that he's done. So yeah, and just a lovely guy. So apart from Graham and David, who else is
speaking of Graham, I know I put it in. Okay, I'll it's
you go and do that. Yeah.
Oh, and I know this goes into something we'll talk about a little later, but
except we've only got about 5 minutes left, by the way. Sorry.
Oh, okay. It's more Graham.
Yes, no, absolutely. No, I wanted you to tell me about this.
Okay, and again, sorry, we keep we're just going. Graham, I've been so lucky to work with Graham. This would be the 4th time. Graham did the poster for my upcoming HP Lovecraft film, which is a period adaptation of The Shadow over Innsmouth. And if you go to YouTube, I think if you type in Arkham Cinema, The Shadow over Innsmouth, you'll see the teaser that we shot probably in March of last year in Worcester, Massachusetts. And of course, if you're lucky enough to work with someone like Graham, you want to work with him on everything you do. And of course, that's Graham's work. So this will be the fourth time that Graham and I have gotten to work together. But after the Bram Stoker Bust Project is finished, the hope is to go right into production, I hope, on Shadow over Innsmouth, working with Graham, working with my one of my best buddies, Reber Clark, who's also on the Bram Stoker Bust. Reber does musical compositions, and he's also an editor. I'm also a nice guy who I've never met. You meet so many people via social media, is Joel Harlow. He's an Oscar-winning makeup artist. He does all Johnny Depp's makeups. Joel has agreed to come on board to do the Innsmouth look and the deep one. So Joel is a huge Lovecraft fan. So I get the privilege of working with Graham, Reber, and Joel. So that's what's next coming up later this year.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. And this is a feature film you're doing, or?
It is. This will be my second Lovecraft film. Like everyone else, we all sort of, write and act and sculpt, and we all want to make our film, and I'm no different. This would be my second Lovecraft film. I made one in 1999, which is a period adaptation of Lovecraft's story, Cool Air, and there's trailers for it on YouTube. It's been released on DVD. So this will be my second one. So, you try and recreate Lovecraft what you see when you read it in your head. So
it's very. I'm not the hugest fan of Lovecraft. I think it's. I have to. I think it's possibly the American, in the same way that you may struggle with the. It's just, I just don't get it. Having said that, I love The Thing. And I completely appreciate and totally respect, the influence that he's had on people, and they are quite extraordinary. I writes beautifully. He absolutely, completely admire the way he writes.
But it's like you said, he's work. He's work. The first time I picked up Shadow over Innsmouth, and I finished that. I'm sorry I didn't finish Dracula, but I finished the Shadow over Innsmouth. I put it down 10 pages into it. It was a lot like the beginning of Dracula, where he's describing this bus ride into this decrepit town. In 10 pages, I just didn't care. Put it down, picked it up a year later, and was like, oh, this is a really good. It's more a novella opposed to Dracula, which is the size of what phone books used to be. They don't even have those anymore. So, but yeah, you're right. Lovecraft, he's work. It's an acquired thing for sure.
So I really look forward to seeing your film, because then I don't have to read the book.
Don't feel bad. I won't finish Dracula if you won't finish it.
I think somewhere I've got actually. I've got no excuse, because I've got beautiful copies of the Necronomicon somewhere.
Don't read from it aloud.
Yeah. Well, actually, because Steve Jones, who is contributing to The Art of Horror, and that looks a fascinating book.
Yeah.
Did a collection of
The Shadows over Innsmouth. I've got the first one, and it's great. There's a story by Neil Gaiman in there. There's oh gosh.
Oh, no. This is the collection of the original stories in a beautiful black book.
I don't think I've seen that. I've got the Fedigan and Bremer edition of this one. It must be 15 years old, so I might be thinking of a different one.
Probably in the last 3 years. Definitely in the last 3 years.
Oh, I haven't seen.
Right, he did do Shadows over Innsmouth and further shadows or more shadows.
Oh, speaking of which, another great guy. I've never met him. Lisa Morton introduced us via email. Couldn't have been nicer. He's like, yeah, how many books do you need? And he put me in touch with the publisher, and he said, I can either sign the books, or if you have a book plate, again, just beyond helpful. That's the nice thing. Everyone who, I've asked, can you help donate a book or a sculpture or t-shirts? Everyone said yes. So Stephen Jones, if you're listening, thank you, brother. You're very, very cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's a very, very nice guy. And of course, I met Steve originally because he was the unit publicist on Hellraiser.
He was?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. Oh.
It really is a teeny tiny little world.
It is.
It takes a long time to walk around it, but yeah.
Well, I had no idea that, you're right. It's like the more revolutions around the sun each of us get,
Yeah,
you're right. Eventually, we all cross paths, and if we're lucky, get to meet in person. All that good stuff. So hopefully, will I see you in May? Even though we're going to Dublin, the hope is to visit Graham for about a few days after that in London.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, no, definitely, because Graham's in the centre of town. I'm on the outskirts of town, London. Yeah, no. Oh, God. Oh, that would be absolutely wonderful. I was trying to work out if I could get to Dublin, but probably not.
Well, if not, I promise to do the very uniquely American thing. When we go to the pub, I'll go, oh, what do you know? I forgot my wallet. Next one. I won't. Wallets. Okay, here it is. I'll bring the wallet.
Listen, we are actually now at the end of our allotted time.
Right.
And there was a couple of things I do want to share with you before we finish up, and that is Kelly was saying the same thing about Steve Zarebski, that she met him recently at a con, and he's just the nicest person. So Steve, I do hope to meet you one day at a convention when I'm next on your side of the Atlantic. Eric is from Eric Gross is suggesting that you could listen to Dracula on an audiobook rather than Wagner whilst you're working, so you don't actually have to read it.
Eric's done his homework. And yet I listen to Wagner. It just seems like whatever you're doing is so bigger. I listen to Wagner when I do the dishes, and it's very epic and heroic as I'm rinsing off.
I love that. That's just such a great image. And of course, all I've got is the Looney Tunes of Kill the Wabbit going through my head.
Kill the Wabbit. Everyone knows that.
It's just got. Brian, this has just been absolute. I have asked Craig. I have done some sculpting myself. I'm pretty certain I've shown these to people before. If you can see them, this is Craig and I. These were the cake toppers that I made out of Fimo clay.
On the wedding. And he actually said I do after he saw that?
Yeah, as you can see, I gave Craig a very prominent tummy.
Okay, but no, I want to know. I see a white beard, so I see a little more color in those beards on you.
Well, it's some time ago since it was some time ago since we actually did.
Okay, dude, that's really cool. Again, that's what makes a union. Between whoever's going to tie the knot so nice. When you do customize it, you don't get some generic thing. It's like you make something with your heart and love, and it's on there, and it's very, very cool. Let me see. I want to see him again. That's really no, it is.
Sorry, folks, if you've seen these before, just to do a little bit. It took me about. This was a second go. It was doing the kilt in Fimo. That was fun, and the waistcoat with the water, the patterning and so on. It was just so much fun.
So now, is that the Berman family tartan that he's wearing, or?
Oh no! I can't remember what the
Berman clan.
The Berman clan. I think it is. It's not called the Berman. It's so complex, these things. And it's a Victorian invention anyway. The idea of clan tartans and so on. Craig will actually tell me which tartan it is that I'm kind of recreating.
Well, I'll make you a deal. If I ever would take that long walk down the aisle again, you're sculpting my wedding thing. So it's on top of it.
I'm quite happy to, make myself and Craig look very, very bulbous, but I would hate to.
Well, again,
but no, I would hate to do that to anybody else.
No, it's you guys are still together, so I consider that a sign of good luck. You've done something right, so I can use all the luck I can get. So, ladies, if there's any takers, I do clean up all right. I will play Wagner when I do the dishes. I won't make you do them, but if I get any takers, we're having you sculpt the wedding cake toppers. Just take about 20 pounds off, get rid of the double chin. If you can lower the hairline, that'd be great. That'd be great. I like the ones you did of you and Craig. I think they turned out wonderful.
Thank you very, very much. And for those of you, why would anybody care? But just as Erskine or Davidson, but I wore Flower of Scotland for our wedding. So absolutely.
Well, Craig is the flower of Scotland. That's his story, and he's stuck with it.
Bryan, I'm going to close on Kelly's comment because I really should wind this down.
She's going to marry me, and you're going to do the cake toppers. Thanks,
okay.
Kelly. Right,
I'm actually going to have my dinner apart from anything else and watch Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which starts again tonight in the UK. I honestly have to say this was one of my favorite chats. Giggled so much. Thanks so much, Bryan, Craig, and Nick, and all of you other chatterites. So good to see you all again. It's our pleasure, Kelly. Thank you so much indeed for supporting the show. Seriously.
Kelly, you're a peach, and if you and I tie the knot, okay. I'll throw in doing the dishes. If you can stand the bottom, Kelly, I'll throw in doing the dishes.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could actually keep a straight face for 2 seconds. Bryan, thank you so much. It's been a real joy. We've chatted a couple of times now. There was so much that I did want to talk about, making bits of dead monks and so on, which you've done in your career as well. Oh, yeah. But look it up online, folks. The Bram Stoker Bust Project goes live tomorrow on Kickstarter. Literally, I have seen the list of rewards. They are extraordinary. Really, really is worth checking out. I will put a link up on the video tomorrow when it all goes live and so on. I'll share the hell out of it as well. Bryan, thank you very much indeed. Good luck with the project. I look forward to you when you come over in London.
Likewise. Thank you for plugging the Kickstarter. If we hit our goal, I'll shake my moneymaker.
Oh my!
I don't know if anyone will want to buy it, but I will shake my moneymaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for watching. This has been Chattering with Nicholas Vince, and I've been chattering with Bryan Moore about the Bram Stoker Bust Project. Good night, folks. Good night, everybody.
Much love, brother. Thanks.